The Wet'suwet'en Yintah is unceded. That means that no part has ever been bought, transferred, or surrendered, and no rights to use or occupancy have ever been given up. That is, nothing has ever been ceded to any person or government. It is as if the Yintah is a separate country. In fact, all of Atlantic Canada, 95% of British Columbia, and a large swath of Quebec and Ontario, including the land that Ottawa sits on, are all unceded. Nevertheless, Canadian governments have done whatever they wanted on all these lands, wherever, whenever, and to whomever they wanted. This is called colonialism, a mindset that remains very prevalent in Canada today. The Supreme Court of Canada has ruled that the traditional government of the Wet'suwet'en, represented by the office of the Wet'suwet'en and led by the hereditary chiefs, holds sole aboriginal title to the Yintah, that the Wet'suwet'en nation has the right to exclusive use and occupation of the land. Hereditary chiefs are totally different from First Nations, also called band councils. The hereditary chiefs lead the traditional government of the Wet'suwet'en nation, which has existed for thousands of years. In stark contrast, band councils or First Nations are structures imposed 150 years ago by the Indian Act. They were created to eliminate traditional governments. First Nations only have jurisdiction over their reserve lands. There are 6 First Nations in the Yintah, and the total reserve land they occupy is about 100 square kilometers. By comparison, the entire Yintah is about 22,000 square kilometers. CGL and both governments repeatedly trumpet that CGL has agreements with 20 First Nations along the pipeline route. The intent is clear, to make it appear to the public and media that the pipeline has significant Indigenous support. They don't say that this is not happening on any of the reserves of these First Nations. Nor this, nor this, nor this. Some of these First Nations, aka band councils, are benefiting from short-term construction-related employment. All are receiving significant sums through pipeline agreements. As for the Yintah, even though First Nation band councils on the Yintah have no jurisdiction over 99.5% of the Yintah, 5 of the 6 have signed agreements that declare that they are asserting their Aboriginal rights, including Aboriginal title. It's worth remembering that these First Nations were created by the Indian Act, and they have no authority outside that act. The Yintah is unceded land, no treaties, no agreements, nothing ever ceded to Canada or British Columbia. So any rights and title that Wet'suwet'en First Nations claim only exist within the definitions of the Indian Act and have no validity beyond the reserve boundaries. By contrast, the Supreme Court of Canada has ruled that the office of the Wet'suwet'en, led by the hereditary chiefs, have sole Aboriginal title over the Yintah. It is shockingly disturbing that the government of British Columbia would write such insidious deception into a legal contract.